Hi, I'm Craig the Geologist, and today we're going to be reviewing some of the best resources out there to help you identify your rocks. Now, we're not going to be talking about how to identify those rocks, but we're going to be looking at the best educational tools you can bring out with you that can give you a hand with that. So I've got 4 books today. I've got the National Audubon Society's Guide to Rocks and Minerals, Simon & Schusters, very similarly titled Rocks and Minerals. This little handy book, which is very relevant to folks in Michigan, a little bit less relevant to folks outside of Michigan, but still very good, and hopefully different regions have similar books, titled Michigan Rocks and Minerals. You'll notice a theme here. And also really the only field guide I've found for identifying fossils, National Audubon Society's Field Guide to Fossils. We'll also be talking about some of the apps that are out there for identifying rocks. Those are very popular nowadays. I am not a big fan, but we will have a look at them. We'll compare a few. We'll see how they hold up. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it. And let's begin with National Audubon's Field Guide to Rocks and Minerals. Technically, it's in North America, but honestly, North American rocks and minerals are pretty much the same as the rocks and minerals everywhere else in the world. It's an entire continent. So let's open this thing up and have a look. I should point out that it begins with about 20 pages or so of introductory material for those who are really interested in diving in and learning more about the minerals themselves and the various properties they have. But it is fairly dense. It's not very light reading. We get into the meat and potatoes of the guide here, and you'll find that the pages are organized by color. So you have your green minerals here, we have our violet to pink, our blues, our red minerals, browns, whites, grays, metallic, and then you've got your descriptions over here. Pages and pages of descriptions. Then, towards the back of the book, you have rocks. So what we saw before was all minerals. Over here you have your rocks. And remember, the difference between a rock and a mineral is minerals are what rocks are made of. So a rock is defined as being a group of minerals all stuck together, basically. We have our igneous rocks, our metamorphics. I believe the first few pages were sedimentary. Nope, they weren't. Well, sedimentary must have been in there somewhere, but it's easy to lose because there's just not very many rocks in here. And then you've got your descriptions of rocks over here. So what are some of the pros and cons to this guide? Well, both a pro and a con. They're organized by color. We tell people all the time, do not try to identify your minerals or your rocks by color alone. But the fact is, we're visual creatures. And so when you see a red mineral, you're automatically going to try thinking of other red minerals you've seen. So it is helpful in that regard to be able to say, hey, this is a red mineral. Let's look at some other red minerals. What really drives me nuts about this guide is the fact that the descriptions are on a different page than the photos. So for example, let's say that I think I found some railgar. Okay, so I've got to go look at page 370. Okay, so I flip on over to page 370. Come on, where are you? 370, 370. All right, and now here we are, railgar and arsenic sulfide. And I'm reading that. I say, oh, I don't think that's that. Let me go back and take another look and see if it really matches up. All right, and wait, hold on, I lost my page. What page was the railgar on? Well, there's photos on 186, 205, and 215. So, all right. Well, is that 186? Wait, hold on. Okay, well, definitely doesn't look like that. All right, and then what did it say the other pages were? 212, and now you're looking around, you're trying to remember what page. It was 215. Okay, I guess it kind of looks like that. go back to, what was it, 370? Okay. You know what? After you do this with about a dozen minerals, you're about to lose your mind and throw this book right out your car window or right into the lake, wherever you happen to be. It drives you nuts. It's really frustrating. One nice thing about this is that even though you're not supposed to identify rocks rocks and minerals by color, you have another option here. It has them listed, organized into colors, of course, but now it's got them all listed by hardness. Hardness is a great tool for identifying rocks, and I'll be producing a video about that before too long. So you can say, okay, I've got this purple colored mineral. It's got a hardness of 4. So, okay, let me find purple. We'll just say there we go, violet to pink minerals. It's got a hardness of 4. Okay, well, is it chabazite? Is it maybe some apatite here with a hardness of 5? Maybe we've got smithsonite or something, fluorite. There we go. Maybe I've got fluorite. And then you can check it. Read page 428, and you zip around in here and find 428, and you read about it, and then you try to find the photos. You can get to where you're trying to go there. Now, for rock identification, this guide is paltry. There's just not much. And they waste space. You're never going to be able to identify a rock by staring at a cliff. All right, it's just not going to happen. Elsewhere in here, I think they've got like some pictures of mountains and it says granite. And the question is just why? Why bother? It's just silly. And there's not very many in here. There are many more rock types in the world and that you will encounter than what's displayed in here. So you can see there are some real benefits to this guide, but a few drawbacks as well. Let's have a look at the next one. This next one has always been my favorite. Simon & Schuster's Rocks and Minerals. This is one that I carried with me all through college. As a geology student, it was real handy. This introductory page is far more extensive than the introductory pages of the National Audubon Society guide. This one, I think, has about 60 pages of introduction talking about all the different characteristics. But it's also probably quite a bit more in-depth than what you really need. We have the key here. This shows how rare it is. You're going to be looking for more common minerals. You're probably not going to be finding something ultra rare out there on our shores or in the woods. You're probably going to be finding more common ones, even if you wish they were rare. The fact is you're not mining underground in Afghanistan for these. You're finding them on the shores of the Great Lakes. And we go right into the native elements: copper, silver, mercury. Now, these are not organized by color like the other one. Okay, so better, right? Well, these are organized by their composition. So we went from the native elements, now we're in the sulfides, and we're looking at sulfides now. Now we're still in the sulfides. Let's come on over here. Now we're in the oxides, more oxides. Now we're in nitrates. Well, so that's not very handy at all for most of us, is it? It's great for a geology student who might know that, okay, I think I'm in a copper producing area. This might be a copper sulfide. Let's see how that matches up. But for most of us who are just looking to identify the minerals in our rocks, you're not going to know off the top of your head, hey, you know what? Maybe I'm looking at an arsenide and go to the arsenide section, right? Oh, maybe it's a sulfate or chromate. So the organization of this is much, much worse than the Audubon Society's guide. However, one thing I absolutely love about this, your description right next to the photo. So you don't have to be flipping back and forth all day, driving yourself nuts. So once you find what you're looking for, you can look at the picture of the mineral, you can take a look at its description, and it's right there. You can look back and forth, look left, look right, look left, look right. Oh, yeah, I think that's it. Rather than flipping through hundreds of pages, making yourself go insane. So it's real handy in that regard. But if you're trying to find a yellow mineral, you're going to be just flipping through these pages, trying to find something real quick that jumps out at you. If we come over here to our rock section for rock identification, again, they have a lot of description here, some handy geology for those who are real interested in diving headfirst into it. And now we have our igneous rocks to begin with. And again, they've got great descriptions right next to the photographs. I will also say the photos in the Simon & Schuster book tend to be a little bit less museum quality, which I think is very handy, because those beautiful museum quality specimens they have in the Audubon Society book are not what you're going to be finding when you're out collecting. So you want pieces that aren't quite as gorgeous looking. So what you're seeing here are photos of rocks that are a little bit more representative of what you might find while you're out collecting. They have a lot more rocks in here than the Audubon Society book does. Huge advantage of this. Much, much better rock identification book. But very in-depth. A lot of information, and it's organized in an inconvenient way. Finally, here we have Michigan Rocks and Minerals. This is definitely made for the hobbyist. An actual geologist would probably go nuts trying to use this. But what they have in here are rocks from around Michigan. And these are pretty representative of the country. You can definitely use this guide elsewhere in the US and around the world. You might miss out on a few rocks and minerals that are in your region. And there are definitely a few entries in here that you won't find in your region if you're outside of Michigan. But it is generally a pretty good representative book. This has the most obnoxious organization system. It is organized alphabetically, which does not help you find what you're looking for if you don't know what you're looking at. You know, if you're asking, hey, is this quartz? Okay, sure, you can zip over to Q for quartz. But if you're staring at a white mineral, you're like, let's look at a whole list of white minerals. You are going to lose your mind flipping through these pages trying to find what you're looking for. Although, honestly, you're going to do the same thing with the Simon & Schuster guide as well. The descriptions are pretty good. They're a little bit less scientific than what you find in the other guides, but they're probably more in line with what you're looking for. However, like in this Michigan guide, it's very Michigan specific. It tells you where in Michigan you're going to find it and the varieties you'll find here. So if you're in California, you could buy this Michigan guide and probably identify most of the rocks and minerals you get. But the notes talking about hematite and the Gogebic Range around Ironwood, it's not going to be handy where you're at. And they do have some ultra rare rocks in here, very rare finds. And sometimes it just feels like maybe they're throwing something extra in just for the sake of taking up space. Why did you have to create an entry for junk? In all seriousness. So all right. So it does have in the very beginning a quick identification guide. So, and this could be handy for you. If it's black and it has some properties here, then try checking out this mineral, and then you can flip to those pages. I think a lot of folks don't notice this in the beginning of the book, but it is handy. So the pros and cons of our 3 rock identification books. National Audubon Society's Field Guide to Rocks and Minerals. Very, very thorough. It's got everything in here in terms of minerals. Rocks, very meager, not enough. Organization, great. It's by color. However, you're going to have to flip back and forth to a point where you're going to lose your mind to find what you're looking for, going between the photos and the descriptions. Simon & Schuster. This was my personal favorite. Way more in depth than you probably need. This is a geology student's guidebook, really. And it's organized terribly for the hobbyist because it's organized by composition. Here's the phosphate section. However, the descriptions are right next to the photos, and the rock descriptions, there's just a lot more rock varieties that are included in here. And the photos are more in line with what you're likely to encounter. And then Michigan Rocks and Minerals. Organized terribly. It's alphabetically. So unless you're finding rocks alphabetically, it's not going to be super handy in that regard. But it does have a little identification guide to help you speed your way to finding the right mineral here. The information is far less in depth. That is, it's more handy for the hobbyist. You might not need to know the crystal system that your rock comes in. You might just want to know, okay, where is it found? And this is Michigan specific. You could use this anywhere in the world. And hopefully in your region, they've got something similar for you. Finally, let's have a look at the National Audubon Society's Field Guide to Fossils. This is set up in the exact same way as the other one, as the Mineral and Rocks Guide. We got a lot of information in the beginning. They tend to provide a lot more information about different periods of time and the life you find in the fossils, Devonian, Cretaceous, whatnot. We've got 50 to 80 pages of that. Different regions described. And then we get into our fossils. And here we are. It's organized the same way. We've got our pictures of fossils. And then your page that you're going to want to go to. And it's organized by types. So we got sponges and corals, disc-shaped, cone-shaped, arthropods, you're looking at bugs there. Gastropods, you're looking at basically snail shells. Snail-shaped fossils, clam-shaped fossils, scallop-shaped fossils. And then you come over here, you're going to find your information. Lots and lots of information here. Very, very in-depth. There's not a whole lot to compare on this because this is really all there is. So if you want help identifying fossils, this is your option. Now, for this video, I originally planned on identifying a few rocks and minerals, using those guides and comparing how it goes. However, I'm in danger of making this an hour-long video. You don't have the patience for that. I don't have the endurance for that. So we'll save something like that for another time. But what I will do is whip out the phone and we will use some rock identification apps. I am extremely negative about rock identification apps. As an admin formerly for Michigan Rockhounds and now for Rock Hunters of the Great Lakes, I see people ask about their finds all the time. They say they've identified it on this app. They know what they found. They found a diamond. You didn't find a diamond. I once had someone swear up and down that they found the largest chunk of osmium ever discovered. That was worth $24 billion or something like that. I'm like, no, you found melted aluminum on the beach. These apps have been notoriously bad. And so I've got very low expectations going in. But AI is getting better all the time. Most of my experience begging people not to use these came from a few years ago. Let's see how today goes. All right, well, let's begin with Google Lens. This is probably the least reliable of your options, but it's also the one that people tend to go to first. It's free, which is attractive to everybody. And, it's Google. Google's always right. That's where we get all our information from, right? So let's see how Google Lens does. First, I want to thank Google for putting Rick and Morty up here for us. But let's open this up and see what we got here. So let's begin with something that should be real easy. All right. We got a granite. Let's get a photo. Let's see what Google Lens tells us. All right, it is telling us we've got an agate geode, feldspar elbite, flamestones, sphere carnelian. Yeah, so this is just a piece of granite. Are these results useful? No, they weren't. But let's have a look at a different one, huh? Here, let's get another piece of granite. And this should be real obvious because it's broken. So let's have a look at this. And it's telling us it is eudialyte. Okay, we got granite showing up there. Ocean jasper. Raw rhodonite. Yeah, so I think we can conclude that Google Lens is not the way to go on these. How about this nice piece of hematite? This is pretty much something you could only identify as hematite. Let's see how the app does. All right, okay. So when it's incredibly obvious, then Google does the job. If it's not incredibly obvious, I mean, if there's any possibility of ambiguity, then Google Lens fails pretty hard. Unfortunately, this is the point in the video where I've got to break in and do that whole obnoxious thing everybody does in their videos. Hey, smash that like and subscribe button. I hate it, you hate it. But the fact is, that's the easiest way to support what we're doing here. Hitting that subscribe button ensures that you find more of my content and more content like this by other providers. It also helps us to monetize our channel. And God help me, if we can actually make some money doing this, I can afford to produce more content more often. So please smash that like and subscribe button. Let's try out another app I've got. I downloaded this to my phone just a couple of days ago. I am extremely biased against AI, and so I have not been using these apps. But let's give this one a shot. Well, I'm really looking forward to playing with the valuation button here. Let's identify. All right, let's begin with the granite that Google Lens couldn't handle. All right. Granite. Identified it right away. Well, that's encouraging. Let's try the other granite. Okay. Granite again. All right. We're 2 for 2. Doing good. And since we're going with our super obvious ones, let's try out the botryoidal hematite again. See how that one goes. If I can't identify this, I'll be real worried about the app. Hematite. Bam. All right, we're 3 for 3. Let's get into some tougher ones, though, because you probably don't need this app to identify the most obvious ones. How about this guy right here? This is a cleaned up, gorgeous, almost museum quality specimen of prehnite. Let's have a look here with the app. See what it tells us. Forgive me for having an ugly thumbnail. Prehnite. There we go. All right, let's see the other options it gives us. Grape agate, smithsonite. So these are all wrong, but it's for its first option, it's given us the right answers so far. Let's get a little bit more obscure though. How about a very rough piece of prehnite? This is something usually only someone with a lot of experience in the area, either geologist or someone who does a lot of rock hunting in the Keweenaw, would recognize as prehnite. It's very broken. Let's have a look at it. Okay, well, here we go. I promise you that we did not find an emerald in the Keweenaw. As much as I would wish that I found emerald, it's definitely not. Tree agate, nope. Calcite, no, although there is probably some calcite clinging to this specimen, so maybe it identified that. But it did not identify the prehnite. It identified it as emerald, and that's the problem with these apps. Very often it gives you an answer that is unrealistic and makes you think that you've struck gold. All right, how about this piece right here? This is a piece of rhyolite. All right, beautiful patterning on this, gorgeous. See how it handles that. It's telling us it's rhyolite. All right, very good. It's actually doing pretty well, this app. It's got one very bad misidentification, but overall, it's got a pretty decent track record. Let's try out, got our pudding stone right here. Let's try the pudding stone out. Conglomerate, well, pudding stone is a meta-conglomerate, so I can't fault it for that. That's very good. Let's go even a little bit harder though. How about this guy? This is another rhyolite, but it's a rhyolite with some epidote. It's very dark colored. See what it tells us. Rhyolite. I've got to say, this app is working very, very well. How about this diorite here? Diorite. There you have it. Let's really, really test this thing now. We're going hardcore. All right. These are going to be tough ones. These are ones that I do not think this will succeed with. All right. I got here some Isle Royal greenstone. Not from Isle Royal, of course. Tree agate. Nope. Incorrect. Green jasper. Nope. Basalt. Nope. Okay, so it couldn't identify a really beautiful gem quality Isle Royal greenstone, also known as chlorastrolite. That is the state gemstone of Michigan. All right, how about these guys right here? These are some barrels from the Bancroft area in Ontario. Amazonite, okay, well there's Amazonite in the same area that these barrels came from. Emerald, okay, this isn't really a gem quality of barrel, but it's got barrel in there, so yeah, aquamarine, variety of barrel, so okay, yeah, not bad. That's acceptable. How about this guy right here? We have quartz with some really nice quality epidote clinging to it. How are we doing on the quartz? Opal. No, this is definitely not opal. What's our second option here? Quartz. Okay, well, there we go. It's our second option, but definitely not opal. What if we focus on the green here? Epidote. All right, good. So it did identify the epidote. That's encouraging. All right, right here, I have a talc schist. Let's see how it does with that. Limestone, incorrect. Euperlite, even more incorrect. Schist, there we go. What was the third option? Didn't identify it as being a talc schist, but hey, that's all right. We'll count schist as a schist. How about a nice banded iron formation? Oh, that beautiful hematite there. Let's see how it handles that. That should be a pretty easy one. Hematite, there you go. Gives you the mineral, not the rock type, but that's all right. Now this will be a bit of an obscure one. This is referred to as Thompsonite in Michigan. Although it's not true Thompsonite, it is probably more accurately naturalite or some other mix of similar mesolite minerals. Let's see what this says. Thompsonite. Well, there you go. Color me impressed. This app works really well. Not 100% as you've seen, but it does a decent job for sure. Let's take a look at this banded chert. This is some beautiful banded chert. Should be a real obvious one for it. Yep, chert. There we go. Now let's pick a more obscure chert. How about this guy? This guy has a coating of manganite on it that's commonly found on the Great Lakes. We can see here that it is brown inside, but let's have a look like so. Say that you found it like this. You didn't know that it was broken. You didn't know it was brown inside. Yeah, sandstone, incorrect. Wishing stone, that's not a real rock type. Adder stone, not a real rock type. Okay. If we see the broken side, though, will it be able to identify it from the broken surface? Chert, bam, there you go. So I guess we're seeing the limitations and the strengths of this this app. How about some polished beach stones? How about we have a look at this guy? This guy is actually an agate. Let's see if it can recognize it. We'll give it the best looking side here. Agate, there you go. I gotta say, it works really well. And for our final test, let's have a look at a couple of fossils. How about this guy right here? All right. This is a brachiopod fossil. I don't remember the exact species. Let's see if it can ballpark it for us. A sea urchin fossil. Well, no, it's definitely not that. A shell fossil. Well, yeah, I guess that's not very specific, but yes, it is a shell. Very good. We have another brachiopod fossil here. This is a nice, beautiful one here. This should be super obvious, especially if it's only identifying it as a shell fossil. Yeah, there you go, shell fossil. All right. Not too shabby. And yeah, the app here is called Rock Identifier. It's the Rock Identifier app, and I gotta say, it works really well. It is not 100% by any means, but it is a good, good looking app. It does a good job. All right, so what did we find here today? Well, of our 4 books, your Field Guide to Fossils is your only option for identifying fossils. Of the 3 rock and mineral identification books, well, your local field guide is handy for the hobbyist, but this particular one, not organized well. Alphabetical, that's no good. Simon & Schuster's Guide to Rocks and Minerals, the most thorough guide out there, really in-depth, organized by composition. So great for geology students and folks who really want to dive into the science of it, but not so great for the casual hobbyist. And then you got your National Audubon Society book. The photos, not quite so representative of what you'll find out there. They're more museum quality specimens. That's less helpful. And the descriptions are on wildly different random pages compared to the photos. And it's got a lot less rocks to identify in here. However, it is organized by color. It has a chart for looking up the hardness, identifying by hardness and color together. So it is by far the easiest one to use and probably the most effective for the casual hobbyist who wants a very thorough book that can be used anywhere. The apps were a bit of a surprise to me. Google Lens, not so much. I thought it was going to be bad, and it was awful. It couldn't identify a granite. But the AI has come a long way. That Rock Identifier app seemed to be pretty good. I am not sponsored by them. I have never even used them until yesterday when I started practicing on a few of these rocks. It was not 100%. It identified opal for quartz. That's not great. It identified my prehnite as being emerald. Again, you're not finding emerald in my neck of the woods. However, on average, it was right much more often than it was wrong. So I would say if you're using an app, make sure you get a good one, because Google Lens, terrible. Rock Identifier, very good. I don't know about other apps, but I imagine there's a whole broad range depending on the quality of the AI. And AI is really taking leaps and bounds, getting better every single month, it seems like. So I may have to film a whole separate video for this by year's end. Who knows? But just be cautious when you use it. If it tells you that you found something worth $20 million, I can pretty much promise you that you didn't. If it tells you you found quartz, you probably found quartz. So yeah, I've always said, stay as far away from those rock identifier apps as you can get. I thought that's how I was going to wrap this one up today, but it's not. That rock identifier app was really good, and I actually do recommend it. I would recommend it, though, to be used in conjunction with an actual guide like this, though, so that when it tells you you found, osmium worth $4 billion, you can maybe look in here and get a better sense of what maybe you're looking at. All right, thank you for joining me for this review. I hope you found it helpful. Get out there and good luck.